Hello everybody and welcome back. This is Learn Hittite and today I've got a very special presentation in store for everybody because I'm going to be giving you an overview of the Hurrian language. What about the origins of the Hurrians? Well, the ultimate origin is still obscure, alongside many aspects of the language that they spoke. However, what is known is that their culture and language impacted the Near East to an extent which is often overlooked. Some researchers have declared the Hurrians as latecomers to the region and that their roots lie somewhere in the Caucasus, an idea based on some perceived linguistic associations with the languages of the region. However, others believe that the Hurrians may have been present in the Near East as early as the creation of the first city-states. The most accepted story of the Hurrians at present goes a little like this. By the middle of the 3rd millennium BCE, the Hurrians arrived in the Near East. By the 13th century, the encroaching Hittites and Assyrians eventually swallowed up the Hurrian-speaking Mitanni state. Hurrian may have been spoken in a few isolated pockets for a number of centuries afterwards, before, unfortunately, dying out. In An Introduction to Hurrian by Speiser, the author describes the process of Hurrian gaining its current name. Originally, Mitannian was used, based on the name of a state in Upper Mesopotamia, and later Sabarian, from a kingdom or region also in Upper Mesopotamia. However, through the study of the cuneiform records uncovered at Boyaskala, linguist Hurrian in 1915 highlighted the usage of an adverb in Hittite, Hurlili, meaning in or in the way of the Hurrians. Speiser also notes the corresponding form in Akkadian, Hur, giving us Hurrian. The term Hurrian was adopted as the preferred name based on the fact that the other names, Mitannian and Sabarian, had only a geographic scope. The oldest Hurrian exists as personal names documented in texts concerning the conquests of Akkadian kings. The Tish Atal inscription is the first Hurrian inscription proper. Tish Atal was ruler of Urkesh during the 3rd dynasty of Ur. Other short texts in Hurrian have been found dating between the years 2000 and 1500 BC. However, the primary source for the examination of Hurrian language and culture up to the present is the so-called Mitanni letter, authored around 1355 years BC. Unearthed in 1887, it's a diplomatic document spanning nearly 500 lines. The ancient trading city of Ugarit, modern-day Ras Shamra, on the Mediterranean coast, has yielded some bilingual and religious texts in alphabetic Hurrian. Excavations at Tel Brak in Syria revealed a fragmentary text in Hurrian, closely related in style to the other Mitannian texts. The documents from the Hittite libraries of Boyaskala are arguably the second most important sources of Hurrian after the Mitanni letter, and cover a variety of text types from omens, ritual magic, mythology, historical texts, and Hittite bilinguals. Some researchers have tried to look into the etymology of the word Hurrian. However, the results of such investigations are far from clear. Some ideas are presented on page 4 of Speiser's Introduction to Hurrian. Hurrian is related to Urartian, according to academic Woodard. Between the late 9th and the late 7th centuries BC, the Urartian language was utilised in the empire of the Urartian kings, spanning regions encompassing present-day Armenia, Azerbaijan, and northeastern Iraq to the Euphrates River. The exact geographical origin of Urartian and the specific areas where it was predominantly spoken remain uncertain. However, it is likely that Urartian held prominence in the mountainous areas alongside the Upper Zab Valley and around Lake Van. At present, Hurrian and Urartian haven't been reliably shown to demonstrate a relationship with any other languages or language families. It's a similar story to other language isolates of the Near East such as Hattic and Sumerian. Linguists Diakonoff and Starostin Sr. have published work attempting to show a connection between Hurrian and the northeast Caucasian languages. Hurrian scholar Wegener has noted that whilst the work linking Hurrian to the Caucasian languages is promising, it's far from being definitive. In 2010, researchers Fournay and Bomhard published a work attempting to show a distant relationship between Hurrian and the Indo-European language family. Inside this work, they also presented a sketch of the Hurrian language. Now, the overview of Hurrian itself in the book is done really well, but the efforts of the authors to link Hurrian with Indo-European seem strained and limited. An opinion supported by linguist Cassian in an article titled Recent Studies of Hurrian, dated from 2012. For example, I noticed that the authors make an attempt to reinterpret a kind of connective suffix we find in Hurrian an, which I always loosely translate to as and, as some form of accusative case marker. Because in some sentences, instead of taking the interpretation of this suffix meaning and, we could also understand it as having a kind of accusative meaning. And the authors say that this is comparable to the proto-Indo-European ending of M in the accusative. Of course, M is not N, merely they are both nasals, and it's hard to see a true accusative present in Hurrian. Fournay doubled down on his theory and published a response to Cassian's review. In the response, Fournay widens the scope of Hurrian having an accusative ending by referring to Spizer's multi-page analysis of the N particle in 1940 and limiting its presence to earlier forms of Hurrian. Fournay also does battle with some of the issues raised by Cassian regarding the methodology they employed when attempting to link Hurrian with Proto-Indo-European. Well, that's a bit of background, so let's get stuck into a little bit more detail. To begin with, I'd like to say that in putting together this overview of Hurrian, I have, of course, consulted the literature extensively and tried to present the least contentious aspects of Hurrian. As always, you can find a sources list in the video's description, but please remember, as with all fragmentary languages, there are areas of debate and questions we simply don't have answers to yet. So I want to take a moment just to say one thing, because let's be honest, I'm far from an expert in Hurrian language. In fact, prior to making this video, the only contact that I had with Hurrian language was when I attempted a few months ago to make this video on Hurrian language, and I gave up because I thought it would be too complicated and a little bit out of my league in terms of making such a video. However, I've given it a second shot, and I want to give recognition to the authors who have really supported me in this journey in becoming familiar or gaining some familiarity with Hurrian. First shout out has to go to Ephraim Speicher. I'm sure I'm pronouncing his name incorrectly, so I do apologise. He wrote the first I think, overview of Hurrian grammar, although there might have been a few works preceding that I've not had access to and are definitely not in English. Secondly, the works of Ilse Wegener. Can't necessarily indicate one specific work of hers that I've used in the production of this video because I've used many, so I recommend checking out her material. And finally, I want to recommend something that I think everybody should have in their library, and it's The Ancient Languages of Asia Minor, published by Cambridge in 2008 and edited by Roger D. Woodard. Not only does this book give a great introduction and overview to Hurrian, but it also does the same for Urartian. All the Anatolian languages are given an overview by Craig Melchett. Hittite is an exception because Calvert Watkins did that. And there are also overviews of Georgian and Armenian, although I haven't paid them much attention, but I'm sure they're great because all the other overviews in the book are. It's a fabulous work. I picked up my copy online for something like $40, and it was well worth the investment. Roger Woodard has actually edited some other similar books, and in my shopping basket at this moment on Amazon is the book that he did on the introduction to the ancient languages of Asia and the Americas, or something like that. Can't wait to get that and give it a look over. So yeah, if you're interested in getting a grips on Hurrian language, it's the works of those three authors that you should probably be checking out first. So here we've got a few bullet points concerning Hurrian. Hurrian was mainly written in syllabic cuneiform. Some texts from Ugarit use consonant cuneiform. The phonological system of Hurrian is at present debated, so we don't exactly know how it sounded. However, Hurrian probably has a stress accent falling on the penultimate syllable. Hurrian is famously an agglutinating language, and its root is situated initially. Hurrian, in the agglutinating process, exclusively uses suffixes, and the word order is verb final. The Hurrian root. So roots in Hurrian always occur in the initial position and can be modified by a complement, and then a nominal or verbal suffix. The meaning of many complements is unknown, but it is thought that they delicately modify the meaning of the root, giving us a stem. Woodard in 2008 identifies 14 non-exhaustive root complements. If we want to create a noun from this stem, we need to add a vowel, usually I. And from this noun we can make further additions. For example, add a derivational suffix to create a profession. And in the following example, you can get an idea of what I mean. So we have urb, meaning cook or slaughter. We can add the iterative or frequentive complement ar. We add our vowel and our derivational suffix for profession. And we have the word butcher. In terms of nominal morphology, we have the following elements we can agglutinate: the root, root complement, noun formation suffix, thematic vowel, derivational suffix, relational or possessive suffix, plural and case markers, and finally enclitic pronouns. This isn't an exhaustive list. For example, we have what appears to be an honorific suffix which can be added to some nouns denoting human beings. And also there is some extremely limited variation in the order possible. Some possessive suffixes, for example, are attested as preceding derivational suffixes. This suffix chain that I've presented is based on the description provided in Woodard 2008 and uses the same terminology. However, other chains are presented, for example, in Wegener 2000 or Fournay and Bomhard 2010, which are generally in agreement with each other, but sometimes they break down the chain into a greater number of subdivisions or use slightly differing terminology. With regard to the case system, Hurrian has between 9 and 14 cases. Here we have presented the 9 Hurrian cases as seen in Woodard 2008. Hurrian is an ergative language, meaning that the subject of a verb with an object is in the ergative case. The object is marked in the absolutive. If the verb lacks an object, the subject is marked in the absolutive case. Of note, Hurrian has no grammatical gender, and an interesting area of further reading, for those who are interested of course, is the Hurrian phenomenon of suffix duplication, whereby case suffixes are repeated in certain conditions. The following text gives probably the most extensive coverage of Hurrian suffix duplication, so I recommend checking this out if you're interested. Let's take a look at a few Hurrian examples using some of the features we've just discussed. So here we have a sentence in Hurrian meaning, and my brother has asked for a wife. So asti means wife, it's in the absolutive case, and we can see the expected vowel ending added to the root. Saroza is our verb. If we take a look at the first word in our example, meaning my brother, we have the root, shen, with a vowel used for some kinship terms. Next we have our first person possessive suffix, meaning my. Next we have the ergative singular suffix, followed by our third person singular enclitic pronoun, and finally an enclitic meaning and. This is the enclitic that Fournay and Bomhard believe can be reinterpreted in some instances as an example of the accusative case in Hurrian. In contrast, we have the following sentence demonstrating the absolutive case. My brother has sent. We have the verb in the final position with our root shen and root vowel, with the form for my slightly modified for the absolutive case. So, as we've just seen two verbs in use, let's go over some verbal morphology. Now, the Hurrian verb is complicated and not all of its characteristics are fully understood. However, similar to nouns, the root sits in the primary position and can be modified by complements. Then markers for aspectual and temporal forms, markers for valency, negation, and person. The tense suffixes are surprisingly simple, oj for the preterite, ed for the future, and the present tense is unmarked. Only transitive verbs take person and number suffixes, and the following simplified forms are found in Woodard 2008. Moving on, let's take a look at a Hurrian text. Here we have a fragmentary letter uncovered in Tel Brak in 1990 by Dr. Jesper Eidem, and it was formally analysed a year later. The letter, although fragmentary, is useful to us because it features some of the characteristics of Hurrian that we've looked at today, and it's similar to the famous Mitanni letter of Tushratta. Let's focus in on the cuneiform on line 4 and transliterate it. We have the sign for he. The following sign is il, then lu, then she, e, ta, a, an. We have a small break in the line followed by the signs for ur, ha, and ni. So urhani has been interpreted as an adverb meaning true or sincere. Breaking down this first line of cuneiform, we have in the primary position the verb form hil, meaning to say or to speak, followed by the preterite suffix, a transitive marker, first person singular pronoun, and this connective enclitic which we've talked about before. This would give us a translation in English as, and I have sincerely or truly spoken. How about a few more examples of Hurrian in action? Well, in Woodard's book there's this nice paradigm which demonstrates the characteristics of Hurrian quite well. I have modified it slightly, so any mistakes are my own. So first of all, the brackets indicate that the vowel is lost. This happens under a couple of conditions in Hurrian, and the equal sign is used to mark morpheme boundaries. So here, this first word, we have the root n, meaning God, and we have our usual vowel I suffix giving us the noun God. To this word we can add the plural suffix na, which pluralizes for most cases with some exceptions. And we would get enna. Following on from this, to put this in the genitive plural case, we just need to add the genitive ending as it's already in plural, giving us a translation of gods. If we wanted to put in the ergative plural ending, it would be as such with the appropriate ergative ending. Interestingly, there is a different way we can kind of somewhat pluralize this noun by actually adding a different noun formation suffix right after the root. We can add a collective noun suffix, zari. Enzari would therefore have the meaning of gods. And continuing on from this, we can actually add another noun formation suffix to create a rather famous Hurrian word, endan. This is commonly translated as the title of a ruler, but probably means, in a literal sense, god-doer. That is at least according to Fournay in the 2012 paper about Eni, the Hurrian word for God. Now, endan itself is famous because it occurs in the Tish Atal inscription. In fact, let's quickly take a look at the transliteration of that inscription because it's interesting to go through. This particular version of the text I modified from Wilhelm 1998, and immediately as I look at it, I can see this vowel here, which means that we more than likely have a noun. And this translates to house or temple. I know that this root is used in other words, for example, for slave or domestic worker. Here we have Urkesh, the name of a famous Hurrian settlement. Endan is that word that we've just looked at. God-doer, the name of a kind of ruler. Here is the ruler's name, Tish Atal. And down here we have the cuneiform noun marker for a deity. We have Nergal. And below we have the verb. Obviously we expect the verb in the final position, although this isn't the complete text, it's just part of it. There's a root and 3 suffixes here. Here is the root, and we have this suffix here. Its exact meaning is debated. This vowel here indicates that the verb is transitive. It was the linguist Diakonoff who interpreted this final sign as being an old Hurrian third-person singular suffix. And the interpretation of this word as a whole is has built. So the translation we can come up with here is Tish Atal, ruler of Urkesh, has built a temple to Nergal. Quite an interesting inscription to look at because obviously it's considered to be the first Hurrian inscription that we have. I'll provide links in the video description with articles where you can get the full inscription and investigate this a little bit further. Well, I should probably start to wrap this video up before it goes on for too long. I hope you've enjoyed and found this overview of Hurrian somewhat informative. As always, it's been an honour and a pleasure to present this content to you today. I'll be back very soon with another interesting video. I've been Learn Hittite and goodbye for now. Wait, stop there. One more thing. Like and subscribe, please, if you enjoyed this video. I always forget to ask, and it really does help, the metrics and the numbers connected to the channel. I'll say goodbye again. I've been Learn Hittite. Speak to you very soon.